Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining today's Watch and Learn webinar, How to Upskill and Reskill Online. And I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Class. Class is a software that provides interactive virtual learning experiences. Class enables instructors to share media such as videos and websites interactively and to talk one-on-one with a participant without leaving the platform. I'm Alexandria Clapp, the Content Manager for Learning Technologies and Sciences at ATD, and I'll be your moderator today. I know our speaker, Chris, plans to keep you engaged throughout our session, so as Joy mentioned, please share your questions and comments with your fellow participants in our chat box, and we will have time for Q&A at the end of our session, so I'll save any unanswered and new questions to be addressed then. And now I'm very pleased to introduce today's speaker, Chris Olson. Chris Olson is a strategic advisor for learning partnerships at Class, and we are looking forward to learning more about how to upskill and reskill online. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Chris to take it away for us today.
Great, thank you so much. All right, happy to be here, everybody. I've got some roots with ATD. I used to be part of the Detroit chapter. That's where I'm speaking with everyone from today, and so happy to be with my crew, with fellow L&D org effective leaders. So I'm going to share my screen here. We'll go through the deck, and we'll go through a couple housekeeping items here because there's clearly a lot to go through. But we're probably, given the amount of time, we can only solve so many of the world's problems when it resorts to skills. So give me a moment while I share my screen here. I'll put this in present mode for everyone to see. Great. And just to recap a little bit more about myself and my organization, the reason I want to kind of highlight us is that what we are doing is kind of actually targeting this space. And so we're looking to help shape and be involved in that and gather the insights and perspectives from those that are actually in this industry that help to inform and how we can enhance our product that we do today. But what we're going to really talk about at a high level, though, is going to be the three strategies that we can help give you to provide a little bit of guidance for you to work with as far as how to really make your learning program successfully online. There's a whole lot. The tech environment has clearly exploded in today's climate, with everyone kind of working from home and embracing the remote lifestyle. And so we're going to tackle a couple of those high-level items here for that. So what we're going to start is just a quick introduction on ourselves. So we'll go through Class and kind of a bit more about myself. We're going to go through the trends in the industry, why skills are so hot right now. It seems like it almost happened almost overnight, even though we've known about this in the background for quite a while, but it's really come to the forefront, and we'll kind of talk through a bit why that's the case. And we'll go through the three top strategies that we kind of have as areas of focus for you to look at, and of course open up for questions to everybody. And by the way, for questions, feel free to challenge. I'd love any feedback as well, because we are a very agile company where we want to capture the feedback and the thought leadership of the practitioners in the space. So please feel free to ask for any more granular questions you might have, and as well as provide any shared best practices and any challenges that you might have run into. We'd love to hear about those. And so just a quick bit about myself. I know there's a quick introduction from Alexandria. Thank you very much for that. Kind of what my role here with Class is to help advise as to how to improve our online platform capabilities and how we can help reskill and upskill all across verticals. So K through 12 education, which is actually where we started to help support for the need for remote learning and how that's affected our K through 12 school systems, as well as for higher education for our colleges and universities, because we know that that's an area for our future workforce coming into play. And then, of course, the corporate market space, which is really where my area of focus is, having a background primarily in the banking industry. But as you probably are all aware of, learning and development, organizational effectiveness, HR practices, those are all really transferable skills that really affect all industries and all markets. And so anyways, that's kind of what I'm here today for. I've been through all amounts of change. I've been through 10 bank name changes in my career with mergers and acquisitions. So that's been a wild ride. And all throughout that has helped inform in what technology to use, how to leverage that within the workforce that that has been that has joined the existing workforce. So lots of change and adjusting for different cultures and organizations, and how that's applied to those each of those mergers and acquisitions as they took place. So happy to talk through a lot of that, as well as also a few plugs that'll do throughout here. You know, I just have a name and a title here, but there's really a lot of other thought leaders that I'm going to try to highlight as we go through here, and kind of encourage to follow and kind of watch the market for other industry trends as they pop up. And so one of the primary ones is an organization called Red Thread Research that have a great focus on research and consulting for the HR practice and L&D space. So if you're unfamiliar with them, I would highly recommend looking them up. The two co-founders are primarily known for being part of forming the Burson by Deloitte department of Josh Burson, which is probably a very familiar name. And so they've got a lot of insights and foresights into the realm of skills. They actually just issued a podcast called The Skills Obsession. So they're really digesting that topic very well. So I would highly recommend checking that out. And so I'll give a few plugs for some other thought leaders as we go through the presentation today. And just to tackle around class real quick, we want this to be more focused around the topic at hand, but just to kind of reinforce kind of why we're talking about it today, is that class is actually an add-on to Zoom. And so we're actually built on that platform. And so what we do is we aim to focus to provide instructors with the tools they need to create that live simulated learning environment as if you're actually in the training room. And so we have engagement functionality built in, as well as attendance and ID verification process, really trying to reinvent the whole online learning virtual space to really help encourage engagement and really give people the tools that they need to do that effectively. And so from not only the instructor, but also for the participants and even the admin for the platform itself, for those that are supporting the technology in your learning ecosystems. So happy to share more about that, but we're going to dive into skills right now. The first thing, the importance of skills, like why skills, right? It's everyone's kind of talking about it, but what does it mean? Why is it such a hot topic? So there's been a lot of trends in that, and you've been seeing some probably more buzzy words that are circulating around LinkedIn, which is going to be upskilling and reskilling. And so just a quick definition on those. Upskilling is going to be wherever you're enhancing the current skill set of an individual to make them enabled to be able to be more and have more capability and more value into the talent that they offer and provide to your organization. Whereas reskilling is going to be close to that, but it's more of almost like a repurposing. So you're providing skills to either encourage them to move into a different role or a different industry, you know, and that could be more at the individual. They're both at the individual level, but there's intention and purpose behind both of those for the individual team member and also for the organization to invest in those areas. Just a quick example, you know, when just in the banking industry, what I heard a lot is that when branches couldn't be open for the banking offices and branches that were out there, they had to reskill the tellers to process transactions in a more remote fashion through virtual. And so having to shift really quickly meant a quick increase in digital skills versus in-person hand counting skills and how to process transactions and open up accounts in a totally virtual environment. And so that's kind of a quick example of taking an existing position, adding a new skill set in order to meet the needs of the market. So why are companies viewing that? Because there's a whole competitive edge that they're going to miss out on, and that's really going to hit their bottom line. And so in order to do that, there's been a lot of reports as they're predicting this in the future. There's I think it was, let me pull it up here, I believe it was Deloitte actually was saying that with the shortage and skills gap that the market is going to see, they're predicting by 2028 that there's going to be 2.4 million positions that are going to be left unfilled. And then not only that, but it's going to cost their GDP for just manufacturing alone is going to be around $454 billion lost GDP for 2028 alone is what they're projecting for right now, unless they address the need for upskilling and reskilling. So in order to do that effectively, you're going to want to build programs that are going to be permeating throughout the entire life cycle. So that means from the point that they're actually applying and how you're selecting the talent that you're choosing, all the way to the work that they're competing day to day, for you, and then for anything that your organization is going to need for the future. And it's at all roles, all levels in the organization are where you're going to want to focus. And you're actually going to want to focus not only on the skills you provide, but making sure that they're engaged and that they're happy. So they really care and they're tied to the purpose to understand why they're focusing on developing new skills, and the big picture is to what that amounts to. So the reason that skills are critical, I kind of touched on it with that it's, tapped throughout everything. But when you think about it, skills are really attached to all kind of HR and learning and development practices when you think about it. So it is how you select your talent. And I think what you're seeing a lot now in the market, organizations are now changing how they are addressing and assessing the talent and selecting who they want to bring into the organization. They're looking at that as ways to motivate and engage the employees by way of providing them work that is going to be tied to the skills that they want to develop and grow in. It obviously looks great for your employer brand. I don't know if you've noticed, but Amazon has been actually sharing that they're going to invest $700 million into skills alone, primarily in tech skills. It's a little bit self-serving because it's all for AWS, but it's to enhance their cloud system for AWS servers. But $700 million is not an amount to scoff at. They're predicting that they're going to have 29 million people globally prepared by 2025 to be well versed in their cloud infrastructure to be able to help support that. So that's just a quick idea of what large organizations are looking at to do to invest right now to prepare them so that they can be hired and they can attract that talent and retain it to bring it in, because they're going to have to provide those positions to actually help to support that, because there's going to be a major skills gap in what the workforce is going to be calling for in order to remain as a productive company. So just looking at it from a global level, here's where current investments are happening in professional development. So oddly enough, the US surprisingly is quite low when you think about it with developed nations and what the current workforce size is. And what was really shocking here is how much China is investing in that. I mean, that is, you can see the different variations and where they're focusing on that. But as far as like breaking down versus online or individual, and then the personal life coaching that's happening where they're having coaches and mentors taking place for that. But this is a severe contrast. And so I know ATD is a global organization, so we have people from all over the globe looking at this. But I just thought it'd be interesting for everyone to see kind of where you're coming from and what your current country is investing in this space. So, but I think a lot are going to be shocked to see not only the United States, but even the UK being so low, and having these other nations up at the top really investing in this to try to remain competitive in the marketplace today. The other interesting thing too is how they're delivering that. So obviously, virtual is the thing to talk about, how to build these skills online. And so today, this is kind of a quick snapshot. And by today, I mean really 2020. And so when this was conducted, this was just at the beginning, actually in the early stages of when COVID was affecting the marketplace and everyone shifting to the workforce. This is a survey that was done through Statistia. And so what they did is they actually conducted this to find out what are the current learning methods that they're doing. This was actually, survey was conducted between May and July of 2020. So this is not even like, further past once we started figuring out how to do things online more as an organization and as learning and development practitioners. So you can see in the color coding here that there's at least some element of online in everything, but not by a little bit, but by a vast majority. So, and what is interesting is how it's broken down in the varying degrees of the different types of training that's being performed and how that's delivered. But what's really shocking is how much is not done online. So really, that's really a small amount when you're looking at it for how much is being done online today. So that just reinforces the importance of how we're doing it online to make sure that it is effective. And I think we're all still figuring out like what is the right balance between tech and facilitation and being in room and replicating what we can't do in a training room and doing that online. So I think everyone's looking to enhance that, which of course that's what class is here for, is to help to address that. So just to really tap onto what the skills are that are in demand, And this is going to be what we're looking at to really protect you for in the workforce as far as what's going to be for now and for the future to come. So everyone's really got a big focus on technology, computer skills. Obviously, that's kind of where we're going, but there's a real reason for that, because there's going to be so much automation that takes place and so much usage of that that is really going to be something where that's going to start to take over. Digital literacy competencies, that's going to be a very significant role as well too. I mean, I think of when I was trying to teach my mom how to use Zoom the other day over the phone. It took a while, but we eventually got there. But a lot of it was getting lost in translation because the digital literacy just wasn't taking place. And so I think you're seeing a lot more people being invested in that. I think you're looking at CEOs and organizations that were traditionally, paper-based, all of a sudden learning about AI and machine learning to see how that can be leveraged to give them a competitive advantage. So the working knowledge of the tech-enabled tools, like again, that's being able to be competent in that and to do them effectively is going to be a make or break difference. Because having access and being able to open up the platform, whatever the tech it is that you're using, and doing it well are really two different things. And doing things well is what really makes a difference between good and great. So robot and automation programming, that is going to be significantly huge. I think we're seeing a lot of that within machine learning, especially like in the medical fields, looking at things where healthcare organizations are looking at how to perform surgeries using robots and automation through that with machine learning. So it's almost replicating and blending a little bit of human combined with computer robot assistance, which is really interesting stuff that's coming out. And then lastly, critical thinking. So I know all this was very focused on all this, but critical thinking is actually going to be huge, because as you might have seen in what you're reading in today with AI, concepts and all these algorithms being built out, they're all made by humans. And so in order for machines and all that to be used to actually help focus on that, it's really going to be driven by how we as humans are thinking critically to solve the problems and the ways in which we're solving those problems. So these are all kind of just the top 5 areas that have been mentioned in Harvard, but it's really comes from the skills gap report in order to have future-proof skill sets by Deloitte. That is where that information comes from. So now we're going to kind of, after we've kind of tried to tackle the monstrous need of why skills are so hot right now and why everyone's scrambling to work on those and deploy those, enhance those. Now we're going to get into the strategies and as to how we can deliver and deploy those. Now, a lot of this, I will admit, it's almost kind of in theory and experimental in practices. So what we're going to try to do is tackle the difference in the concepts and how to do this in a way that is going to kind of help benefit the organization, your local communities, the marketplace, ultimately your team members. And so it's really going to be a wide array that you're trying to look at all the different lenses and perspectives. And so we'll try to go through the 3 different ways in which we can kind of focus on some of those topics to really enhance the skills within your companies that you support. So the first is going to be building a bridge between skills and competencies. And the thing I want to say around competencies before we go further is, like, as we go through the definitions of terms and topics here, skills and competencies, we're going to break down kind of the differences. The other thing I would say is competencies can also be referred to as your behavioral skills, soft skills, but there's different ways in which you can kind of balance those out. I know that each organization's really kind of have these tied and interwoven into how you're attracting your talent and making sure that you select the right skills, which is absolutely critical to maintain your presence in the marketplace, to make sure that you are bringing in what you're going to need to maintain your relevance, to keep your edge and make sure that you're innovating. Innovation is so key right now, and the only way you're going to do that is that you're going to have people that possess those skills in order to help you take your organization to the next level and to keep moving it forward and progressing with performance and results. So focusing on the employee development is huge. That's going to be very critical to maintaining that. The mobility, basically, the other thing that is kind of almost a spin-off of skills in of itself is going to be internal career mobility within your organization. providing a map and a framework to actually give people vision and insight into how, once they do choose to be with the organization, what is their vision and how do you help achieve their vision of where they want to go in their career to progress. Because if you care about the engagement level, which you very much should, because that's going to affect an organization's bottom line, you're going to be very keen on focusing on their career mobility to help them move up in the organization, because that is really what they're going to care about, to be able to find out what's in it for them and have it tied directly to the results of your organization. So it's really a win-win situation. And so that is going to be absolutely critical to make sure that you have a keen focus on that and that you're giving them line of sight into how to make that work. So performance management, and really want to use that term. That's almost like a catch-all term. I almost prefer just performance, really, but I know that performance management is the vernacular that's commonly used, because I believe that there's a bigger element of performance enablement that can often get overlooked. And so, but the whole idea for performance, though, is that is going to be what we are marking as the needed skills, and how we are focusing on making sure that we are observing those, reviewing those, rating those, calibrating them within your organization, so that it is really truly actually accurate skills that are being assessed, and that there's not bias within how those are being rated, and that those that are being rated fairly and equitably. So one thing that I would really love to hyper focus on is just the implications of skills and upskilling, reskilling, and how you deliver those to those in a fair and equitable way. And so, but as far as performance management goes, like you want to make sure that throughout all this process, through the employee development, the mobility, performance management, make sure that your processes are leveraged in a diverse manner. So to define the skills and competencies I mentioned before, and I gave a plug, but I'll give it again here for Red Thread Research, they've really helped to define a lot of this and kind of give words in definition to some of the buzzwords that circulate around. So on the left here, we've got skills set aside. On the right side, we have competencies. And in some of their conversations and research that they've done with other thought leaders in the space, if you attend their events, it's very interesting how everyone has a different view or a slightly different take on the concept of what skills and competencies are. So hats off to them for finding a way to actually try to give some definition here for everyone, to kind of help give a little bit more of a baseline to work off of. So skills are going to be granular, competencies are going to be broad. So small, very technical, focus to the roles and tasks at hand. Broad is going to be more bigger in scope and have different implications that are going to be broader than just your typical role that you possess today. What can an employee do? Basically, what am I physically able to do, or in a task-based environment to do skills, versus how a job is actually done. Was it performed well? Did you use communication well? Was it something where it was leading others, where you were able to collaborate effectively? So those are kind of just a quick hits of how to do that. But whenever you're struggling with what the difference between the two are, this is usually a quick way to do it. One of the most obvious ones, though, for skills versus competencies is the owner is going to be the employee for the skill, whereas the owner for competency is going to be typically HR, but it could be management or leadership within your organization. The whole idea is that competencies are really going to be broader in scope, more organizational, more big picture, and skills are going to be more focused at the individual level, that is going to enable them to move up and prove what they're doing and the value of the work and the results that they're able to commit to and be able to create. So how do you build a strategy around this to develop those things that we've talked about, to create those skills and to be able to handle that? So building a strategy around this with tools and to support them is no easy task. So what you would probably want to first start off with is determining what those tools are that are most used by the employees. Bring those into your L&D programs. I know that there's a lot of, we feel a lot of nervousness around that. HR, haven't always been the tech leaders within organizations, and usually we let IT, kind of drive that, or maybe we've, had a lot of risk management influence us in the concerns of worst case scenarios for what can happen and how we select those tools to enable that. But really what we're going to want to do is we're going to have to literally meet people where they are. So you might have seen this. I wish I could do like a show of hands here for everyone that's joined today, but the quick shift in how everyone pivoted to the use of mobile, where there was resistance around that before. I think, how could you make people complete their required compliance training when they're fully remote and they're no longer in the office anymore? And how are you going to make sure that they're actually able to take it and track that and record that they're able to get those passing scores so that you can supply those to your examiners and regulators? I mean, you really just have to, it really forced our hands to embrace the concept of mobile. That was very scary to a lot. I mean, even from on the HR side, you got the payroll implications. How are we tracking their training, and how do we make sure that we're paying them for that? Within our payroll policies, if they're not physically in the office. It was the thing that I think a lot of people struggled with. We all found a way to do that. Now I think what we're finding is, and this is another thing that I'm interested in kind of how some of the other practitioners and thought leaders out there have tackled this, is how do you equate and compensate for the development that team member is doing when they're completing that on their own time. And so either way, we have to meet and deliver the development opportunities to them where they are. And so this is another area where this ties into inclusivity, to make sure that we are providing it direct to them and that we're removing a lot of bureaucracies and barriers that are in the way. And so mobile is one of the obvious ones, but there's other things that you can incorporate within there to make sure that we're providing it to them that's accessible to everybody. One of the other things that we want to focus on is don't forget to incorporate human wherever you can. Sometimes, there's the fatigue that you hear about of when you've been online just too much and you need those brain breaks. And so maybe it's time to take a break from some of those things that you've traditionally done, where you try to have everyone click on the thing to give their emojis, and maybe you actually have them do a physical interaction when they share their screen in order to elicit some human responses and to see that face and to see the body move. It's going to be different than just seeing the typical smiley face that you've always seen, or the thumbs up that you always give in a quick reaction to something. So it just makes it feel like you're going to have more connectedness. There's a bunch of different creative ways to do that. And I think this is where a lot of those that have been facilitators in the training rooms, you are going to be the best at it than anyone else, because you've done that to try to find ways to engage those that have been more quiet in the back of the room, and to bring them to the forefront and to re-engage them. So now the difference here is that as you're doing this online, you're just going to do it in a more broad manner. So it's kind of repurposing and rethinking of what the tactics that you use there to incorporate those in the virtual environment. So, but the thing is, you can never go wrong with being more human and wherever possible, because sometimes you can feel like a computer yourself at times when you stare at the screen too long. So the things around your strategy for your tools to support the skills is experience is paramount. It has to be as frictionless as possible, as easy as possible as you can make it. Whenever you're trying to download software and put in a new app, for instance today, maybe some of you haven't been Zoom users before, and you had to download Zoom and install that in order to connect with us today. It's another step, and to make as few steps as possible is going to be critical in this, to remove all those things. It's not going to be easy, but finding out ways to really simplify the process, so that way that they can just easily come and go to have a consumer grade experience within your working environment to access their development for skills, is going to make that all the more adoption within your organization. I would even go as far as to say, how they can search for what skills are even available. So that's a huge thing as you're looking at the tech tools that you're looking to bring in and deploying skills. Making that searchable is absolutely key. Having something with a built-in Google system to find out ways to search within your organization, to either do it in their, on their own time, or to connect with someone that already possesses that skill within the organization, are going to be those ways to really make those connections to facilitate that. But again, it's all about experience is going to be the absolute key to making skills come alive in your organization. So by focusing on the strategy, the real reason I call that out is that it's very easy to get distracted by the tech that's out there. There's a lot of noise and hype in the marketplace, and it's, even us, like we're saying that we fill the skill gap, but you really should look into class to see how we are actually doing that and see if that is a good fit and aligned with how you would use it today in your own work environment. And so, because some can very really, give varying degrees as to how they achieve what they're doing. And so you really want to, instead of focus on letting the technology choose what your strategy is going to be, focus on your strategy, figure out what it's going to take to achieve the learning outcomes that you're looking to get results on and deploy and deliver and give the proof of work. And then you reverse engineer backwards from that to find the technology that's going to be available that helps to support that. And there's a lot of big technologies, company names that are out there. And what I think you'll find is that there's going to be a lot of new innovative technology that's going to fulfill your strategy a lot more than a name that's been familiar to you. So it takes a little bit of exploring, but you really need to use your strategy as the constitution of what you're going to do for your learning ecosystem. And then that's where you go to your second section of how you're going to build out that ecosystem based off your strategy. So you may come across along the way where you discover new things that you didn't know existed, and that's good. But again, if you focus on your strategy and, if you have to adapt it, so be it. But really, as long as you focus on that to really drive what you're doing, that's going to help you with your selection of your ecosystem to know that you're going to have things to respond to for the needs for delivering work to your team members when they need it most, which goes right in as a perfect segue into our next area, which is making sure your content is flexible and that it can be delivered in that flow of work. And so what I mean by flexible is that could be whether it could be paper, it could be digital. It might need to be that your content needs to be closed captioned for those that are hearing impaired. So looking at things that address accessibility to make sure that you're being inclusive and that you're not limiting anyone that should be involved. Looking at the different areas in which you provide the training as geographically. There's been some organizations I've been in my past where they didn't have very strong internet bandwidth. So that meant any video-based training, they just missed out on it because it could impact, the business. And so in order to not let it affect operationally, they really sacrificed and really dismissed, what training should have been accessed by them. One of the things that is interesting in skills, PwC just came out with something relatively recently this year, I think earlier in March. And what they actually found was that there's been a huge missing out of opportunities in career due to bias. And so bias is also a catch-all term. I'm gonna talk in the next strategy section a little bit more around that. But we think of it often as people, but it's also in our policies and how it's been designed. And so we really need to take a thoughtful approach into how we deliver the content so that it's meeting people where they are, no matter who they are. And so that's why we really want to focus on that. And in the flow of work is something where we really need to provide something better than here, go ahead and take this quiz. And then, all right, that means you got it, check the box. And then all of a sudden now they have to do that in their day-to-day work. And then they get deer in the headlights. We need to provide them the support and the ease of use to be able to access that content in the moment of need when they need it most. There we go. So now here we get to a part where setting clear expectations with leaders and managers is something around skills that you would think more is focused on the individual team members themselves. But in order for to cultivate a organization where you're going to have skills actually like foster and grow and be nurtured within your organization, you need the involvement of your leaders and managers. And now there's probably different ways in how to do that. So there's a little bit of a do and don't kind of list that you can do and to think about as you contemplate how you do involve them. But you really are going to have to focus on enabling the team leads to understand how to access the training, how to make sure that they can help guide them to it, how they're going to coach to that. And so, really just teaching them to help think for themselves and to grow them to be, critical thinking skills to be able to do that on their own. And also to how to measure, how to observe that, and to make sure that when they're measuring their skills, that they're doing it fair and equitably, and that it's accurate. And so that is going to be very important for leaders and managers to understand how to do that, and to kind of what is their role in the whole process of their employee development for their life cycle. So really, it's kind of helping to equip them to do that. And you really need their buy-in up front to be able to help make sure that they're involved. Sometimes it's good to, and usually what you'll find is that they are. That it's just really they just don't know what role and where to step in between the L&D and the HR departments and where they're supposed to take over and how that's defined. So working with them in order to kind of create that definition for their roles is really going to help with that. So if they know that up front, it's going to help them encourage to really work with their employees and team members to help really equip them to be able to deliver on that. So finding the individuals to have autonomy of skills and coach to competency, that's going to be absolutely critical as well too, because they really need to have the bureaucracy removed. In order to be able to do this, it's really their passions and their drivers are really going to have to kind of take some of the priority in this. Now, managers are going to play a role in balancing that out, providing the work that they're going to do and the projects they're going to work on. If you can align it to the skills and the desires they have to grow in and develop in, then that is going to be, again, a key way where you can blend those two together. So that way it's a win-win on both parts. The team member is going to grow in their career. They're going to have the skill set that they want to where they want to go. The managers are going to get great results because the team member is going to feel more invested in. They're going to feel that there's more trust, that there's more care and concern in what they're going to do. So really kind of bridging that gap between manager and executive sponsorship and leaders is going to be the key to make some of that come out. So of the do and don't list, which we could really spend all day on just that alone. But after you've involved the managers, here's kind of some of the different ways in which you can really help shape that kind of more broken down in an outline format. So dedicating time for learning is going to be way more critical than what you think. The reason that becomes important is that for whenever manager is allowing an individual team member to go and work and develop on themselves, they have to, that's time away from them working and being productive, right? And so there's always that balance that the manager has to take in doing that, whether it's managing the amount of staff to make sure that they have enough team members to be able to withstand to keep operations going, but they still have to allow for them to go to that to go to training. And so there's that balance that they have to maintain. However, what we find is overwhelmingly that there's a lot of managers, if they're not bought in, if they don't understand the process, if they don't know the big picture of the organization for strategy around skills and why they're so critically needed, because they can at times become very focused on productivity, that they can deny and prevent their team members from going to those training sessions and getting skilled in whatever it is, whether it is synchronous or asynchronous, whether it's e-learning content or whether it's in a training classroom or whether it's coaching and mentoring. Dedicating time is absolutely critical to make sure that they have that budgeted in their staffing in order to allow for the opportunities for the team members to go and get access to that training. I mean, again, one of the hardest things that we have to hear is after we create a learning program to upskill our organization and to rise to the call and answer that by creating those programs that's going to be rolled out, organization wide, to answer that call for the needs, to then have a manager say, yeah, you can go to that training next quarter because I really need you here right now. It does quite a few different things. It handicaps the organization from maintaining its edge, competitive edge. And then it also is going to really disengage the employee when they find that the business is more important than their own individual career, and that they have to put their career on hold for the business. So I'm not saying that business is not important and critical. I'm just saying that there's a balancing act there. And that's where, if you have the managers involved, and that if you were able to remove bureaucracy from that process, so that maybe managers aren't the one that approve whether they go to training or not, and that you have executive sponsorship that can, kind of create some mandates to allow for that to be more widespread, you're probably going to see a lot better adoption of that. Because right now we're seeing a lot of unfortunate bias that comes through with that really starts at that manager level. So when you seek that executive sponsorship, the whole reason for being that is you're going to want to help prepare them to understand why it's so critical. And so oftentimes for those, those executive leaders that have been reading in the market and knowing what other successful organizations are doing, it's usually coming around to investing in their team members, whether it be through engagement efforts to really understand and keep a pulse with where their cares and wants are, whether it's defining their purpose to make sure everyone's aligned and understands their role and their mission in that. And then the other one is going to be actually just investing in them and themselves. That all equates to being increased revenue to your bottom line. It will affect your stock price. So when you're able to kind of speak their language and understand why it's critical, they're going to kind of put two and two together pretty quickly, so that they're going to really help kind of support those initiatives that you're going to have. It's not always the easiest conversation, because sometimes it can be so focused on dollars and cents, and listen to their chief financial officer very often, right? And this is a little bit more in that gray area when we're kind of equating value to something that's more qualitative versus quantitative. But if you're able to help bridge that gap and show, kind of give case study examples of how this can play out, I think they're going to be very keen and listening to what you have to say, and really be supportive of your initiatives as you roll those out. So going into the next step here of sharing pre and post work, this is probably not anything new to anyone, but I think what you'll find is new is that in the ways in which we do this, and how do we do that online. And why we involve managers, again, this is something where allowing the managers to have visibility into what a team member is going to support them and to make sure that they go through it, and that managers can understand it and speak to it themselves to help support it after they return back, or after they've completed their training, to reinforce those skills that they would have possessed. So the post work might have something where they need to follow up on those items, and maybe the manager would observe those skills to make sure that they're properly focusing on those and building those skills, because a lot of skills are like a muscle, and the manager should observe and help to work with that, as you would like a fitness instructor. And so just really trying to help them be as healthy as they possibly can within their skill set at their individual level there. So in the pre-work, to circle back to that, again, kind of going back to time, sometimes there's pre-work that has to be involved in order to go through before you attend a training session, whatever the prerequisite is. But in order to prepare for that, to make the best use of everyone's time, whether they're going to a physical training classroom or whether it's online, doing that, allowing time for them to complete that ahead of time to make sure that there's efficiency and maximize the amount of time that they're to make sure that the training is going to be effective when they're actually there. That is going to be absolutely critical. And so again, it comes back to making sure that a manager is going to provide time for them to be able to do so. But really, if managers are going to be able to support this, you really need their involvement to make sure that it's going to be from start to finish with whatever the skill set is they're looking to focus on. And then lastly, creating pathways for automation. And so this kind of ties into some of the technology that you use, but it's also going to be really more around the processes in which you have implemented in your organization for skills. So it could be maybe there's a nomination process that you have to build in. Like, what's the easiest, simplest way that you can allow for people to communicate that out so that they, one, are aware of what the development opportunities are, what that process is for them to be included in it, and then what is the ways that you can do it so you can make it so that you're not having to, it's almost like people applying for a job and you having to review a bunch of applications for people to be selected for specific learning programs. That's just a case and example there, but you really need to make sure that you can work with that, because you're going to have finite resources. I think that it's fair to say that training departments and the learning development departments of our organizations, for everyone that's been here, has known that we've learned how to work with that shoestring budget and be creative in that. But that's because we have finite resources. Until we seek that executive sponsorship to have them write some big checks, you need to think of the best ways to make it so that you can not have to spend so much time on doing logistical work and focusing more on the delivery and the quality of the content that you're creating. So that way they have the best learning experience and they can be engaged and really hone in on those skills that you're looking to focus on for the needs of your company. So one other thing that I want to also focus on the concept of time and also with pathways in the overall experience really is that as you're looking at all this, you really want to focus on having a good plan B as well, because as you're working with everything online, not everything is perfect. If your internet goes out, your computer breaks, all of a sudden your password is changing, you can't get in and access it in time and you're about to go live. And so making sure that you test everything out beforehand is going to be critical, but having a plan B for all of that is going to also be very important to make sure that you can have a disaster recovery plan if all of a sudden you run into those technical difficulties, because they're bound to come up. And so it's really just kind of trying to think about what those are to make sure that the experience for everyone, including managers, in that process is going to be addressed. Because if you think about it with the managers, it could be that whatever technology you chose did not send them the email to let them know about the pre and post work that they're supposed to be working on. So what is the reason behind that? What is a quick way that you can get them involved and make sure that it works, that they're able to support that? So there's all kinds of ways that you want to basically test and be skeptical of the tech that you're using to make sure that it works. And if it's something that you have to do dry runs beforehand, if it's something that you need to make sure that your phone can be a hotspot network if your internet goes down, those are the different things you want to be prepared for the worst case scenarios, because it very could happen that it happens in the moment when you least expect it. So you just want to be prepared is the only thing I would, the last parting thoughts on doing things virtually online. So that's actually going to be a lot of the deck of what we wanted to cover here on paper today. This is just scratching the surface on skills. There's so many thought leaders in the space that you could be keen on to help watch as well that are out there. If you haven't heard of LinkedIn and you want to get on that, I highly recommend it to stay connected with the thought leaders. That's a great place for exchange of information and being part of associations. To give a plug to ATD as well, they do great research and they tap into the network of your leaders to provide that very high level overview of detailed reporting of what's to come in this. But there's going to be so much that comes out in this space because it's so hot. There's a lot of tech companies you're seeing they're trying to tackle this by creating a taxonomy of skills as well. And so I think that's going to be an interesting thing, is to creating something that's somewhat similar to a 9-box in performance reviews and having something like that created for the skills environment is going to be an interesting thing. I think we'll see a lot of people are going to experiment and try to come up with that. But I think it's just a matter of watching the market to see. Probably the next 3 to 5 years, we'll start seeing some things take shape that's going to help kind of provide more definition around that. But at any rate, that's going to be the end of the deck here. So I'd love to turn it over to Alexandria to see if we got any hot topic questions that we'd love to address.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Well, I'll just remind folks to start dropping in their questions in the chat, but I'll just jump back up to ones that either folks have just messaged to the panels or us privately, and the ones that they've sent out to the whole group chat. So the first one is, can you share the top 5 skills that are in demand from the Harvard resource that you shared earlier in the session.
Yeah.
So for whoever that is, whether you're jot those down, cool. And I think, yeah, you have the link at the bottom of that deck too that shows the resource that you use for that. And are there any statistics that could help the value conversation with a CFO that you recommend?
Yeah, good question. Boy, there's, I'd have to do a Google search to find that out again, and nothing comes top of mind, but I know I have done that a couple of years ago when I invested in a new learning system. One of the reasons we did that was we were going through a merger, and I knew that our learning system would not work, our LXP. And so as I said, if you want this merger to be successful, we're going to need these tools in order to do that. And the quick story I can share, even though I'm sorry, I don't have a resource for that, but I know I found it through a Google search. But the thing that I would say is that really push, and challenge them. If you need more resources, keep on finding that. But what ended up happening as a result is I convinced our chief technology officer, I convinced our chief information officer, my CHRO was really nervous around the rollout of this because HR is not the IT group. And so every time we invest in tech and we tell them we need the tech, there's this kind of reputation that goes on the line for that. And so, but what I will say is that by the end of the merger, as it took place and everyone, we had 5,000 employees learn a whole new core banking platform in 3 months' time. I got a big fat bonus as a result of it. Not because I knew, but because I pushed them to say that this is absolutely has to happen if you want a merger to be successful. So sometimes it's tying it. The thing, I guess, the moral of the story here is tie it to initiatives and projects you have in the organization, and kind of almost make it seem like if you want this to guarantee success and to not run into pitfalls and to have things not actually happen, like training not happen for people to learn this new thing that you just rolled out, whether it's a process or software, then that's really going to be another thing that's going to speak to them to make them realize, yeah, maybe we need to make this investment in tech to support it for the initiatives based off of, we just need to guarantee the success of whatever this important initiative is within the organization.
Cool. So jumping to number 2 of your 3 strategy recommendations, where you talked about building a strategy around the tools to support skills. So do you have any recommendations for folks who how they can determine which tools are being used most often and whether or not those are appropriate for L&D programs?
You betcha. There's one that I mean, I'm a little bit biased in this because I spent time working with them, but because I've been so closely to it, I know that it is one of the best tools used to help to determine what would be recommended for use. Red Thread Research has they have a whole set of interactive tools that you can look at for tech that's out there for the HR L&D space. And they have one specifically for learning technology. And so what it does is it helps you define, like, what are the vendors that are out there? What are each unique capabilities of them? And you can kind of basically go through the process to define what your needs are and to have recommendations based off of those vendors. The other thing that I recommend is that I found great use in the website g2.com. And so it used to be called g2crowd.com. Now they're just G2. And the reason that I kind of like them is you can view them as like the Amazon reviews of learning technology and really any enterprise technology that's out there. And so the thing that I like about them is that they really try to attempt to verify the user reviews, that they're actually, have been practitioners that used that platform when they leave reviews. So you got a little bit more assurance there. And so just, it's really averages. You can see the number of people that have reviewed it to kind of see how that shapes into that. Very similar to if you have Amazon, how you make your purchases based off of Amazon reviews. It'd be a little bit similar. Obviously, much more expensive and wider scale than buying whatever the next product is that you would get on Amazon. But those are kind of tool things I would highly recommend. But if you're ever lost, I would dive into the interactive tool that RedThread offers to help kind of look into that to prescribe what you would be best used in your organization.
Awesome. Those are great recommendations. Thank you. So in this section, you also talked about building the learning ecosystem and the tools. And someone asked, do you have, I mean, it's not going to be a specific number, but is there an average timeline for how long this takes? Or is it an ongoing process for folks, especially when you're having some of those conversations and you're trying to collaborate with IT department and other folks? What can people expect, and how can they navigate those conversations?
Yeah. And that's a really great question. So I think each tool that you purchase and invest in has a different amount of time allotted to it, depending on the usage of it and what the intended use of it is going to be. So your learning management systems are going to take a really long time to implement typically, because you have you're probably gonna have like a lot of data sets that's going to move around. So usually your HRIS system, like the Workdays, the Altipros, the Oracles, ADPs, all those different systems that have all your employee data need to map over and be aligned to create profiles in your learning system, and tracking of records and tying those together. Those are all different things that usually take a lot of time to kind of make those connections and build out. So it's usually best to do things in scale if you can, so that you could start with a pilot group. And honestly, that's what I would recommend as well. If you're just not sure about something, do a small pilot. If you're looking to develop into a coaching platform, if you're looking to try out a new, text mobile reinforcement of your learning content, any new piece of add-on technology, I would see if you could work with a vendor to get a pilot going before you make a full-fledged investment, and then you can do it to scale. So that's one lesson I would say, because when you're going to make a big investment, the salespeople are very great at making you believe you need to do everything all at once. And I would almost be leery of that. I think you want to look for something that's going to have a little bit more of a relationship tied to it, where you can start small and grow with them to build that out. Otherwise, trying to redo this all over again, re-implement a new learning management system over and over again, you will wear yourself out, and everyone's going to be frustrated with you with your digital adoption of that, because you're just moving their cheese over and over again and they don't know where to find it. So one of the things that I do find interesting is that I think there's going to be shakeup in e-learning, because there's going to be a lot of walkthrough technology that's going to help with the digital adoption of those systems that you bring out. So you could look at the various ones of like WhatFix and WalkMe are kind of the two most notable ones. An interesting company called Pendo is a Pendo. They are usually tied to actual like tech products themselves, but they're actually working a lot and providing interesting analytics around the usage of your tech tools. So those are kind of some interesting things to kind of help support, like not only what to bring and buy and buy and be brought in, but also to think about your strategy as to where exactly you need to use those, how to enhance those based off of the data and analytics of the usage of your learning tools. So something to think about for those that are out there.
Awesome. You are just filled with lots and lots of useful resources and info. I want to squeeze one last quick question in, connected to the number one recommendation, establishing a bridge between skills and competencies. Probably someone asked how often do you see skills matrices being utilized?
Yeah, all the time. And I think the thing I would also throw in skills matrices, because they're usually tied into performance management in those rating systems. And so I think there's been a lot of experiment in what other companies are doing in that space. Degreed is a very interesting organization, I think, right now that's really trying to tackle that. And so their thing is really focused on skills and internal career mobility right now. But I think the matrices around skills, because of performance management, the thing I would mention around that is use it very simple. Use a very simplistic matrix if you can. Oftentimes they get so complex that no one understands them, and they don't understand what they're being rated and reviewed on, and they don't understand, like, what they're really proficient in and what they're not proficient in. I think that's something where start simple and you can build out more as needed, but with the speed in which you hope people to move and to grow, and for the upward mobility in your organization to take place, to have quick adoption, keep it very simple, as simple as you possibly can, like no more than 5 skills, is kind of what I would say for a rule of thumb for as you build it out, just so that things don't get lost in the monotony and the bureaucracy of those matrices.
Well, hey, these are awesome recommendations. Thank you again so much, Chris, for your time today. And thanks to all of our attendees for joining. I did want to mention a quick reminder about ATD International Conference coming up August 29th in Salt Lake City. If you want to talk to class and see them, they will be there at the conference as well. So if you're interested to get in touch with them, this is just another opportunity to be chatting with the class team. And with that, I will let you guys go. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you, it's great to be here.